Hello, this is Danny Raymond, the voice behind Ray's Guide. This week, Star Citizen Live discussed the subject of the narrative content that will be their co-emphasis this year along with bug fixes. And I'd like to talk about my concerns about the content and then include my own suggestions on one of the narrative story arcs that I think should be a regular sequence in the verse. But first, a side issue about the Coramor ship sale and the Super Hornet Mark II. Usually, Coramor is pretty lackluster Valentine's Day themed event sandwiched between the In Case You Missed It sale for January and the Stella Fortuna sale corresponding to St. Patrick's Day in March. But this year we happen to have a new ship, although new being a relatively limited sense, since the Super Hornet Mark II just being the update from the prior Super Hornet. But it does qualify for War Bond New Money sale at $220 US with lifetime insurance on a regular ship value of $240. Now, some folks, every time a new ship comes out, immediately try to calculate whether this ship is the new meta. But honestly, I don't encourage that kind of thinking. Metas in Star Citizen have the lifespan of a fruit fly, certainly not long enough to tie up real money. Instead, I look at roles and niches. So what is the niche of the Super Hornet? Well, if you wanted to buy just one fighter and then have that fighter be effective both as a solo fighter and as a two-person fighter, then the Solo Hornet would be the best choice. Because when the second seat is not occupied, then the turret becomes pilot-controlled, but with a player in the second seat, the additional coverage is worth having the second player in that seat. Some fighters in the two-seater category are pretty useless when flown solo, like the Hurricane, and some fighters have the player in the second seat be nearly worthless, such as the Scorpion and Taurus. But the Super Hornet does well, if not the best, in either single-play or dual-player modes. So if your budget is only one medium-heavy fighter for either single or dual-seat roles, well, this is a well-balanced choice. Returning to the main issue, the narrative arcs. CIG said that their goal was to be seeking what you would often find in television entertainment, an A story and a B story. Typically, the A story is introduced at the start of the show and is concluded at the end, but the B story is usually launched a little behind and finishes a little earlier by comparison. But this is an MMO, so there needs to be a third choice, the non-story. This is a sandbox, and as such, you may not have enough time or may have your own itch to do something, or your org has decided to create their own scenario. Those must be good and available even if there is a story arc. My concern is a trend I have been seeing is that the event payouts, in order to attract the most players to the events, are starting to get really so far beyond what you can earn in any ordinary play cycle that you start to feel like you'd have to be a complete fool to not focus exclusively on the event missions. And that makes the game feel less like a free-form sandbox and more like a centrally directed experience. And I don't think that's a good trend. So CIG should put their efforts towards making the narrative missions interesting for their novelty of gameplay rather than, hey, look, here's a delivery mission where you can earn 5 times as much per hour. So thinking about that, there needs to be an event arc that should exist in the game. In fact, it's a story arc that must appear in the verse because without it, the verse makes no sense. And it has to do with the answer to a question which pretty much everyone who's been following the game pretty much knows the answer to. Why is Pyro so downtrodden and not as rich as Stanton? The standard answer is that Pyro's sun is a flare star that is prone to huge blasts of radiation sweeping across the planets. But when do we see these in the games? Way back in the Pyro Playground days, we did have flare events every few hours. Yeah, I even got caught low-flying in one. Things kind of went haywire, and then it knocked out my ship for a few minutes. But all in all, it left me thinking, if these brought down an interstellar corporation and caused so much decay and ruin, wouldn't they be quite a bit more, catastrophic, and also perhaps less frequent, so that Amalgamated Pyrotechnic might have thought that if they worked hard, they could get ahead of it in their operations. If it was just these fairly frequent minor events, couldn't they have just engineered enough shielding into their facilities and craft? So, more catastrophic but less frequent. Something that might easily fit into the description of the B story in a narrative. How could I put these into phases, and what might I do to get the player's actions be consequential to the verse, which is one of their goals? The first phase would start with an idea from the Citizens for Prosperity, and that is that they have collaborated with the EEE Astrophysics on the idea that better prediction of when these major flares from Pyro would occur would allow for less loss of life and the ability for Pyro to support larger-scale development. This, of course, requires deployment of sensor stations, maintenance and repair of those stations, and collection of data. But the other factions of Pyro see these as something else, spy posts, and they want them taken out with extreme prejudice. The comparative success rates determine how much notice and time is given to Phase 2. Phase 2. At the start of Phase 2, very precise time is given for when the solar superflare will happen. This will then involve a large number of supply missions of protective gear, and then, depending on the state of passenger transport in the game, evacuation missions or escorting refugee craft out of the system. Phase 3. The flare itself. Unless your ship is equipped with a special shield generator model designed for radiation protection, but also crap at other damage absorption, it simply will not work. Unless you have a radiation suit, you also will not be lasting long outside. Every station is essentially abandoned, with people either having left or gone hiding underground or to the dark side of planets. Phase 4. Timed emergency NPC medical rescue missions. Lots of them. Go to a place, search for incapacitated survivors, hit them with a med gun to extend the allowed timer, take them to a med bed, and revive them. Some will have just 1 or 2 victims, others may have many, and success will require bringing multiple searchers to find and bring the victims quick enough. Phase 4B, repair missions. Pretty much every fuse in the system has been blown and needs replacing, and a lot of patching. Phase 4C, resupply missions to bring essential supplies or to resume operations. Until a location has at least one mission of each of these types completed successfully, it will not produce anything. Thus, the restoration of Pyro's minimal economy will either happen quickly or not. And that is my attempt at creating a narrative event for Pyro. In the next video on this subject, I'm going to discuss how, in a year in which very little features or resources will be available by comparison, what features they should be using those limited resources on. And now for an update on my giveaways. First, we have our special giveaway for the captains of dual VKB Gladiator joysticks coming along nicely. And they'll be having a special skills contest for channel members to earn a chance at a Mirai Guardian or a Misk Fortune. Then we have our annual IAE Week giveaway coming up this year for the seriously shiny stainless steel shipping ship, the Starlancer Max. And then our Grow the Channel Skip giveaway at 20,000 subscribers for the winner's choice of the marvelous multi-role multiplayer mining meta, the Arasta, or the Benu Big Box Bargain Bazaar, the Merchantman. 1 entry per video. Members, you're entered automatically. Everyone else, just subscribe and comment with the secret word. And the secret word for this video is, what in Star Citizen do metas have the lifespan of? Fly safe, keep it real, and I'll see you in the verse. This is Danny Raymond for Ray's Guide.